If you've grown up in church, there are some words that are humorously called church words. Things like justification, righteousness, sanctification. But what do they really mean? What is it that these church words mean? Well, today we look at a church word. Welcome to Walking Through the Word for today. We're in John chapter 17, and Jesus has begun his Lord's Prayer, if you will. Starting in verses 1 through 5, he talked about how help him, give him the strength to glorify him, and then he shifts gears in verse 6 through 19, and he begins to pray for his disciples. And in this, towards the end of it, he uses a word that kind of encompasses the whole aspect of it. In verse 17, he says, "Sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, I have sent them into the world. For them I sanctify myself, that they too may be truly sanctified." Now, what exactly does sanctify mean? Well, sanctify, in short, means to be set apart, to be made holy. That's what sanctifying is. So when you sanctify, when you become sanctified, as Kirk Franklin says, you are set apart. You are now being made holy. Jesus is saying the same thing is happening for the disciples, that these men have been set apart by God to carry out the mission. And that's really what this whole prayer section is from 6 to 19, is that God would not only set them apart, but would make sure that they are set apart the right way through his truth in verse 17, that they are not of the world in verse 16, and that they would not be taken out from the world in verse 15. No, the setting apart is to help them remember and be reminded that they are a part of a very particular and specific mission of Jesus. And that is to carry out the gospel, to tell people about what they have witnessed personally. Not by rumor mill, not by, hey, we heard from a friend, from a friend, from a friend. We're talking about these disciples have witnessed and seen everything that Jesus has done. And as a result of that, they may now testify what is going on. So Jesus is asking for the disciples. He's praying for them, praying for strength, praying for basically that they would remain on task. And I think that's a great prayer for all of us as well to think about. Are we praying daily that we would remain on task for God's glory? Not, dear God, help me get through this day, but instead, dear God, help me find opportunities to carry out my calling. The disciples had a very full and clear calling, and as a result of that, they were going to experience the full measure of Christ's joy, much like a child when a parent says, hey, you did good, and that feeling that the child gets. Jesus is saying, I'm offering that to you, but I'm offering you more than just the warm fuzzies. I'm going to give you the strength and the power through the advocate to carry this out. I'm going to call you and set you apart. I'm going to make you holy. You are going to do all of these things, but you're going to do it in a difficult environment. In verse 12, while I was with them, I protected them and kept them safe by that name you gave me. In other words, there's an implication here that it's about to get a lot tougher and it's about to get a lot more difficult. Because it's true, Jesus bore the brunt of all of the criticisms and everything that the religious leaders in the world was throwing. They were all focused on Jesus. He was the brightest light. It makes sense. But now that the brightest light is going to be ascending into heaven shortly, now we have other bright lights that have the opportunity to do the same thing. This is what Jesus is praying. God, give them what they need as you have promised so that they can carry it out, so that they can be truly sanctified. Well, what does it mean to be truly sanctified? Well, it means that they truly recognize that they have been set apart for this mission, and they recognize that they have been made holy. Not by actions on their part. We are not made holy because of things that we do, because that we are not sinners anymore. We are made holy because God has made us holy through Jesus Christ. He's reminding, because the disciples are listening to this prayer. Remember, this is not Jesus praying off by himself yet. Jesus is in front of the disciples praying that they may grasp and understand what their calling is. And this is a reminder for us as we pray. God, help us to carry out your calling for our lives. Help us to be sanctified. Help us to sanctify ourselves, to set apart for your calling, and to be holy as you are holy, so that we may proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ.